what's going to follow here is I've got 3 slides, okay? And each of those slides are things that the Pastoral Council, which I'll tell you a little bit more in about a minute, that we've kind of been discussing for a long time and that we kind of feel really pretty solid about. We feel very comfortable about saying, hey, we want to bring the whole church at least up to this spot together, okay, so that everybody knows where we're coming from. Okay, so slide 1. So it's a little bit about our history, okay? So it says we were founded and operated as a senior pastor-led church for most of our history, okay? And gradually, over the years, God has led David Stark, our senior pastor, to broaden the leadership, okay? So let me just stop there for a second. So first of all, this church was founded in, I think, like 97-ish, something like that. And like most vineyard churches, very, very normal, like most Western churches, frankly, definitely like most church plants, churches that are started fresh. This church was led by one couple, I'll say, and specifically David. David was always very much in the lead on it. And David and Debbie did an amazing job, right? I think one of the things we talked a lot about is that we love and honor David and Debbie so much for what they've done. They're actually, let's say hi to them. They're in California right now. Hello, David and Debbie. I think it's fair to say they've done an absolutely amazing job stewarding and leading our church for all these years. They have pastored incredibly well. And so we're always led like that. There's a lot of really great advantages to being a senior pastor-led church. It's very efficient. You always know who the boss is. You always know who to appreciate and also who to blame for everything, right? And and as far as the structure of the church, it's also fairly, it's a decent amount of clarity to it because all the authority comes down from this one spot. Right? And so even as he's been seeking to broaden leadership, it just means there's like sort of more delegation, more people are getting handed different pieces of the church, but it all kind of comes back up to the senior pastor. Okay, so the thing is, as David has been really thinking about really where the church is at, this has been happening for years and years and years, long before he even was really thinking about retirement. He just felt God leading him over and over again to give away more of his authority, to broaden the leadership more. And it was still all kind of under this idea of being senior pastor-led, but he just kept feeling like that's what God was asking him to do. And so kind of an interesting thing has happened that over the years, is that for the last several years, in fact, that has happened so much so that really the Pastoral Council, which is David and Emily McCall and Bill McKay and myself, the 4 of us have really begun to hold the leadership of the church together, okay? To the point where, last point, we really are no longer functioning as a senior pastor-led church, okay? That might be already obvious to some of you. I don't know if it is or not. I think for a lot of others of you, that might be actually like a really big surprise. But we've actually kind of known that's been true for a while. Not something we really set out to do at all. It's just been something that as we continue to follow God down this path, it's just like, we're actually operating more and more, holding the authority of the church together as a team, as Pastoral Council, okay? So, that's the first thing. Okay, about 3 years ago, prompted by several things, including David's retirement, and I'll say some of the other things, it's really like this is when we were coming out of COVID, actually before COVID and then coming out of COVID, we had just realized there was a lot of things about how we were holding the church that had some issues. And so as a result of that and just other things that God was doing, the Pastoral Council commissioned a team that was known as LSAT to thoroughly assess the existing leadership structure and recommend a new structure to better serve our church, okay? So you may remember if you've been around for that long that we talked about this team, LSAT. We like our acronyms here. And really this team went out of the gate gangbusters. We were like, this is great. In fact, if you talk to anybody on LSAT, to a person, we were all thinking, man, we're going to have this thing knocked out in 6 months. We're going to have this brand new leadership structure. It's going to solve all of our problems. It's going to lead us into, the next 25 years of the church, and maybe even be a great template for the whole rest of Christendom. So, like it would probably get to, somewhere in that range. And so we just felt great about that. And I would say pretty soon after we started into that work, it was like, this is like really hard, as it turns out. So, and we started to grind on it, and we started to just, I think we were meeting once a month for like 2 hours at a time, and we were all like really good friends, which was great. So we'd spend like half that time just like hanging out, So it's like we were not getting super far, and we're grinding through things. And as we're in that process, we start to realize, like, maybe this is not the approach that God has for us. And so what happened is that, how did this get to 3? I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back to 2. All right. What happened in that process is that instead of arriving at a new leadership structure, meaning think like org chart, right? Think about like where all these different bubbles go and what people's roles and responsibilities are and how do we structure everything like that. Okay? Instead of arriving at that, through LSAT, God gave us a different way of doing church altogether, a different operating model or a different approach altogether to how to do church, okay? And I'm not going to talk a lot about that specifically this morning, because that's like a big, long thing, okay? It's a huge, huge, huge thing that we're going to explore for a long time. But the important thing is just to understand that change, right? So we went from thinking what's gonna sort of solve or fix things or help us out is this org chart, is this structure, to realizing that, God actually wants us to approach church from a different operating standpoint, okay? And so what's been happening here over about the last year plus, is that we've really been testing this new operating model. And it's very tentatively at first, okay? But if any of you have been in meetings where, someone, probably Emily, because Emily's been doing the most of this, but somebody is like talking about, is like sort of not coming in with this big agenda, like we've got to, head in this specific direction, and we've got to, do this one specific thing. But instead, kind of taking this approach of trying to seek God together, right? Asking questions like, when you think about this topic, what are the things that kind of start rising up in you? What do you notice that God might be bringing up in your heart and in your mind, right? If you've experienced anything that's sort of even remotely like that, right? That's like a glimpse of this model, of this way of approaching church that we've been in. And so we've kind of started very tentatively, very hesitantly, and over this last year, it's just been growing. We've been getting a little bit more sure-footed with it. And we've really been growing confident that it's something that God is blessing, and as we've just continued to go further with it, okay? So that's number 2, is that God has given us this new operating model. Okay, last slide. So, because Pastoral Council is now the church's governing body, we've been learning more and more. We've already been in it, but it's a process. It takes time. We've been learning more and more how to use this new way of operating together as a team, Pastoral Council. And the thing about it is the kind of bigger the fish you're trying to fry, so to speak, okay, the more you've got to be immersed in this model, the more you've got to understand what it is that God is actually saying, how that whole thing works, like how it is that God speaks. And so, God has graciously provided an outside expert, a guy named David Hughes. He's a retired pastor. And Pastoral Council has been working with him since March. And he's coming in person. Part of the reason why I'm talking to you this specific day is that he's coming in person for the first time this week on Wednesday and Thursday to work with Pastoral Council specifically. Okay, we've been meeting with him. It's been really, really awesome. And now he's going to be here. We're going to spend like basically 24 hours with him to really help solidify what this looks like for us as Pastoral Council. And as we do that, our job as Pastoral Council is to, the term that I've highlighted there is pursue God's will together, okay? There's a lot of words, that we might use to label this. That one is the longest because it's 4 words, which I don't love, but it is the most accurate. Like when you ask, like, what is it that you guys are trying to do? What we are trying to do is to pursue God's will together. We believe that God actually cares about a lot more things than we give him credit for, and that he has something for us in lots of these things. And what we're committed to doing is try to seek that out. Not perfectly, not to arrive at perfect answers all the time, but we're committed to try to pursue that together, okay? And the together part is a big part of it. And so, this new model has impacted, like, pretty much everything that we do. Like, every way that we think, it's really something that we can't go back to, right? If you think about the old way is, like, essentially asking, okay, well, what does David think? We have a question, we just go to David, and we rely on David to tell us what God's will is, right? And what we're basically saying is that, no, actually, we can't do that anymore. That's not what we're doing now. We've got to actually believe that on some level we can hear God together in whatever teams or groups or forms that might take. And it's like, it's impacted everything. It's been huge. Okay, so let me just say a couple things before I wrap this part up. This is just from me, my own experience, okay? First of all, nothing that I just said to you is normal, okay? Nothing that I just said is normal. Churches, when they find themselves with a senior pastor, and almost all churches have a senior pastor. Churches, when they find themselves with a senior pastor who's stepping down or stepping aside or whatever is the case, okay? Even churches that really, really believe in God, that God has a plan and are seeking that out, what the prayer is, even in those situations, is, God, you please bring us another leader, right? Bring us another senior leader that we can follow. That's the prayer. And we're seeking God's will for who that leader is, okay? And so we are not doing that right now, right? That is the third bullet point. PC's job is to pursue God's will together, to lay out some next steps as a church. And at this time, that does not include looking for a new senior pastor. But, and I'll get to this more, it will involve more with all of you, all of us, right? But it does not involve looking for a new senior pastor. So this is not normal, right? What I just told you is not normal. It makes communicating about this also not normal, right? Because it would be a lot easier for us to be able to stand up here and say, hey guys, David's going to be retiring, next year, and we've got this great pastoral search committee, and we have located this new person who's exactly like David. I mean, just so much exactly like David, except he's 25 years younger, and believe it or not, he's even better looking than David is, right? Like, it'd be so easy to communicate that, wouldn't it, right? Just stand up here and be like, it's great. And, whatever questions you might have, just wait until he's here or she, and it'll be great, right? That's easier to say than everything I just said. But that's not what God's doing with us right now, right? It's not what God's doing, and so it's not normal. So, if it feels uncomfortable to you, I'm talking to you guys as members of the church, those of you who are members here, that's appropriate. And I feel that way. We've felt that way a lot, is that this is weird. We haven't done this before. In fact, we haven't really seen anybody else do this before. Actually, in the Vineyard, I don't know, obviously I don't know all the Vineyard churches, but I know a lot of Vineyard churches. I only know, now this week I learned of one more. There's only 3 churches in the whole Vineyard that I'm aware of that do not have senior pastor as a named role. Only 3. And even if you think about other churches that have more of maybe a congregational governance, quote unquote, or elder governance, right? Usually if you kind of just scratch below the surface a little bit, at least in America, it's like really all that's about is who gets to hire and fire the senior pastor, right? Does the whole congregation get to hire and fire the senior pastor? Or is it just like a small board that gets to do that? But it kind of always comes back to this singular person. So this is weird. What we're kind of this journey that we're on. And we're not saying we'll never have another senior pastor before. We're not saying that. We're just saying that's not what we're doing right now. This is weird, okay? And here's the other thing I'll say. I am sorry. I am, for many reasons, just absolutely convinced that this is God. And there's lots of little reasons for it, but I would say if I had to, like, one major thing why I am so convinced this is God, is because of this idea that we just saw in 1 John 2. It's an old commandment, and it's a new commandment. It's something that has been with us from the beginning in so many ways. Trying to pull it together here. It's something that has been with us for a long time, from the beginning. This should not be this hard. But it's something that God is making new for us, okay? This idea that we've always had, that we're to be real with each other, that it's about relationship, that it's about hearing from the Holy Spirit, right? Like being really genuinely led by what God says. Like those are things that have been built into us from the beginning. That's what David and Debbie set out to do. And so what I obviously feel strongly about is that this is going further in that direction. That's what this is. This is the old commandment, but it's being made new in some way. And it's weird. It has been hard. And I'll say that as you guys step into it more and more, you'll probably experience that it is hard as well. It is about, I will say, this isn't scientific, but I'll say it's about like 80% relational. Right? There's things about it, there's a process, there's things that you can, that you want to follow, and principles and all that. But at bottom, most of what this is about is relationship. Definitely relationship with God. Relationship with yourself. What is it that you know about yourself? But then very much so, and most difficultly, relationship with one another. And so that's what it's about. And so that is why we're going to be talking about loving one another more and more and more. Right? These things that we need to take the next steps that God has in front of us for our church. They're going to be born out of this one another. Okay? So that is where we're at.